Have you ever wondered about the true face of imperialism? Who was King Leopold II and what was his legacy in Congo? In the heart of Europe, in the latter half of the 19th century, a new king ascended the throne of Belgium. His name was Leopold II, a man of ambition and grandeur, a man who dreamt of an empire that stretched beyond the borders of his tiny kingdom. This desire for expansion was not uncommon amongst European monarchs of the time, but what set Leopold apart was his cunning and unscrupulous methods. Leopold II ascended to the throne in 1865, a time when the world was being carved up by colonial powers. His eyes, however, were set on a prize that was still untouched by the colonial grasp, the vast and resource-rich land of Congo in Central Africa. The Berlin Conference of 1885 played a pivotal role in Leopold's imperialistic designs. A gathering of European powers, it was here that Leopold, through a mix of cunning diplomacy and deceit, managed to acquire Congo. It was not to be a colony of Belgium, but the personal property of King Leopold II himself. An area 80 times the size of Belgium was suddenly under the control of a single man. The acquisition of Congo marked the beginning of a reign of terror and exploitation that would leave a lasting scar on the history of Africa. Leopold, a monarch who never set foot on Congolese soil, ruled this vast territory from his palace in Brussels. He saw Congo not as a land of people with their own cultures and histories, but as a treasure trove to be plundered for his personal gain. King Leopold II, a monarch with an insatiable appetite for wealth and power, soon turned Congo into his private fiefdom. He exploited its resources and its people, setting a precedent for the brutalities of European colonial rule. The dark reign of King Leopold II had begun, a reign that would cast a long and haunting shadow over the history of Congo. Now imagine a land rich in natural resources, exploited brutally for the benefit of one man. In the late 19th century, a new product was transforming the world. It was rubber, a material that was becoming indispensable for the industrialized nations of Europe and America. The Congo, under the rule of King Leopold II of Belgium, was rich in rubber vine trees. The king saw this as an opportunity to expand his personal wealth and power, and he seized it without a second thought for the consequences. Leopold implemented a forced labor system, compelling the native Congolese people to harvest rubber under the most grueling conditions. Men, women, and even children were pressed into service. They worked long hours, often under the hot African sun, their hands blistered and raw from the rubber sap. But the cruelty didn't end with hard labor. Leopold set high quotas for rubber collection, and failing to meet these quotas was met with severe punishments. Whippings were common, as were amputations. In fact, the cutting off of hands became a symbol of Leopold's reign, a brutal reminder of the price of failing to satisfy the king's greed. And the human rights abuses didn't stop there. Villages were burned, women were taken as hostages, and people were starved and overworked. The Congolese people lived in constant fear, never knowing when they might be the next victims of Leopold's brutal regime. And yet, throughout all this, Leopold remained in Belgium, far removed from the atrocities being committed in his name. He continued to amass wealth, building extravagant palaces and monuments, all funded by the blood and sweat of the Congolese people. The Rubber Terror, as it came to be known, was just the beginning of Congo's nightmare under King Leopold II. How high can the cost of human greed go? For Congo, it was a price too steep to bear. We've spoken about King Leopold II's rule and the Rubber Terror, but to truly grasp the depth of the devastation, we must confront the human cost. This was a time when the population of the Congo was decimated, its people subjected to unspeakable horrors. The Congolese people were not only deprived of their land and resources, but their lives were also cheapened, reduced to mere commodities in Leopold's ruthless pursuit of wealth. Famine became a common occurrence as the forced labor system disrupted traditional farming practices. The population was left on the brink of starvation, and malnutrition diseases ran rampant. Disease was another merciless killer. Sleeping sickness, smallpox, and other illnesses, exacerbated by malnutrition and the brutal conditions, swept through the population. These illnesses, however, were not the only threats to the Congolese people. Under King Leopold's rule, a brutal system of punishments was established. The slightest transgressions were met with severe consequences. Mutilation was a common punishment, a horrifying control measure. Hands and feet of men, women, and even children were severed for failing to meet rubber quotas or for any minor disobedience. These heinous acts served as a chilling warning, a grim symbol of the cost of defiance. The killings were countless. It's hard to quantify the lives lost, but estimates suggest that millions of Congolese people perished under Leopold's regime. This was not just a decrease in population, it was a human catastrophe, a genocide that has left an indelible mark on the Congolese people and their history. The human cost of King Leopold II's rule is a sobering reminder of the destructive power of unchecked greed and absolute power. It's a stark testament to the depths humanity can sink when empathy and decency are abandoned for personal gain. The suffering and death under King Leopold's rule were staggering, and the scars remain visible even today. In an age before social media and instant news, how did the world come to know about these atrocities? It's a question that takes us back to a time when information traveled not at the speed of light, but at the speed of ink and paper, courage and conviction. The world began to learn of King Leopold II's brutal reign in the Congo, thanks to a handful of brave activists like Id Morel. Morel, a British shipping clerk, started noticing something strange. Ships from the Congo were arriving filled with rubber and ivory, but the only cargo they seemed to be taking back were rifles and chains. This simple observation led Morel on a crusade to expose the truth. He quit his job, founded the Congo Reform Association, and began a tireless campaign to bring the horrors of the Congo Free State to light. Another key figure was Roger Casement, an Irish diplomat who had served in the British consular service. His detailed and damning Casement report, presented to the British Parliament in 1904, provided indisputable evidence of the human rights abuses under Leopold's regime. But it wasn't just individuals who played a role. Early humanitarian organizations also took up the cause. Groups like the Aborigines Protection Society used their influence to spread the word about the atrocities, using the power of public opinion to pressure governments into action. And eventually the pressure paid off. In 1908, faced with mounting international outrage, King Leopold II was forced to relinquish control of the Congo. The territory was annexed by the Belgian state, marking the end of Leopold's personal rule but not, unfortunately, the end of the Congo's suffering. The world finally reacted, but was it too late for Congo? The echoes of that question resonate even today, a stark reminder of the cost of indifference and the power of the few to stand against the many. What remains of King Leopold II's rule, and how does it impact Congo today? One cannot fully comprehend the current state of the Democratic Republic of Congo without considering the lingering effects of King Leopold II's rule. The wounds inflicted by his reign of terror, though a century old, have not fully healed. To this day, the socio-economic and political instability that plagues Congo can be traced back to that dark era. Under Leopold's rule, the Congolese people were subjected to forced labor, their resources exploited and their culture suppressed. The aftershocks of this exploitation are still felt, with Congo struggling to recover from the economic devastation. The nation's wealth was plundered, leaving it impoverished despite its abundant natural resources. Politically, the power vacuum left in the wake of Belgium's withdrawal fostered a climate of instability and conflict. The lack of a strong, established governance structure allowed for the rise of dictators and ongoing power struggles, contributing to the political turmoil that continues to this day. Yet the legacy of King Leopold II is not confined to Congo. Back in Belgium, his memory is a contentious issue. Statues and memorials dedicated to him stand as stark reminders of a past many would rather forget. These monuments, seen by some as symbols of national pride, are viewed by others as painful reminders of a brutal colonial past. The debate surrounding Leopold's statues and memorials has brought to the forefront the issue of how we remember and portray history. It has sparked conversations about the need for a more honest reckoning with Belgium's colonial past, a past that for many is synonymous with the reign of King Leopold II. King Leopold II's reign was a dark chapter in human history, a testament to the horrors of unchecked power and greed. His legacy serves as a painful reminder of the past, a catalyst for debate in the present, and a lesson for the future.